Hi, you've clicked on to today's tropical tidbit for Tuesday, August 19th. The thoughts expressed in this video are mine alone, and in making decisions, please always consult the National Hurricane Center and National Weather Service, not me. Well, here's the Atlantic now entering the third decade of August, the last 10 days, and usually we have storms out here in mid-August and late August, but none this year so far. It has been a quieter year than normal, as we expect this season to be, but we are nearing quickly the peak of the hurricane season, which really starts to get going climatologically by the end of this month and into September 10th being the peak day of the season. And so we start to expect at least some storms. Even in the quietest of years, storms will end up developing at some point. And right now, we're watching this really disorganized mess in the central Atlantic associated with this monsoon trough, where southwesterly winds from the equator meet up with trade winds from the northeast. And this allows an area of elongated vorticity to develop, and you see some thunderstorms, convection going off. The MJO is entering phases 1 and 2 for the first time in about 3 months, and this is allowing some more upward motion over the Atlantic, and this area of the world is starting to light up a little bit more than it has so far this season. It's a little bit more favorable now. We still have dry air to the north, but the Azores high is weaker up here. You can see it. You can see it not really that strong, kind of off to the northeast. We've got more low pressure out over the central Atlantic now, and so a lot of this dry air is confined over the far eastern Atlantic, not penetrating as far to the west as it has in weeks past. So something like this down here could have a better chance of organizing. Right now, a big mess, but what we have right now is a tropical wave to the north of the monsoon trough, and we have what I call a trade wind burst behind it on the east side of the wave, and this means trade winds that are moving faster than the trade winds to the west of the wave, and so this faster burst is essentially pushing this wave along toward the west. And what this does is it drags some of this stuff to the south along with it. Right now we have two lobes of vorticity or spin in this monsoon trough. One is embedded here in the southwestern end, the other to the northeast over here, and this trade wind burst is helping to push this one along to the west faster than this one, and this one is barely moving at all here. So what eventually happens is as this wave passes by, you end up moving this disturbance to the west, and it eventually ends up to the north of where this one is, and the two stacked together can form a more amplified wave or trough east of the Lesser Antilles. And in that setup, you can eventually close off a more consolidated area of low pressure instead of this elongated trough here. Now, that whole process could take days to complete, and there still may be a chance, though, after that for some development to occur. Models are currently hinting at development. Many of the major models showing some kind of development. This is the GFS showing a tropical storm that originally consolidates out here and moves into the Caribbean, shown east of Jamaica by day 5. The Canadian, very similar, except just north of Hispaniola here, with a tropical storm moving over the islands after again consolidating here. The European was a little bit more flip-floppy on this. Last night's run developed something way out to the east here and then brought it along days after the other models, very late relative to the GFS and Canadian, but eventually developed something out of this trough. Not so excited about the southwestern lobe, but this morning's run did show this becoming the dominant feature, but did not really develop significantly as it passed through the Caribbean near the island. So the European still undecided, but some of the other models are starting to pick up on this feature here, and I do think this is the most likely place for genesis to occur if there is going to be genesis, because of what I mentioned with this lobe being brought along, and eventually the two together will probably consolidate in here on the western end of this monsoon trough. If we're going to get storm development, I think that is where it would be. Now, this would be a few days away from affecting the islands, but rain headed this way for the Lesser Antilles and the Greater Antilles and Puerto Rico as well. Regardless of whether we get any tropical development, this is a large area of monsoonal-based low pressure that will be propagating westward. There will be rain and weather with that. Details pretty impossible to know until we have a consolidated disturbance that can be tracked. Right now, we do not. Only a best guess as to where genesis might occur. But lots of uncertainties when we don't have a consolidated feature yet, so there are a lot of questions. However, if we look at what's going on during the next several days, this is the GFS velocity potential map, which shows a divergence or spreading out of air aloft in the green colors here, which allows air to rise from beneath and form thunderstorms. The MJO, again, is moving into phases 1 and 2 for the first time, really, this hurricane season, and this is allowing some of this upward motion to spread over the Atlantic, unlike where it has been most of the season back here over the Central Pacific. This is still a very East Pacific based pattern. We're probably actually going to have hurricanes out here in the Pacific at the same time as all this is going on in the Atlantic. But despite that, favorable conditions creeping into the Atlantic, which this disturbance is moving into, and the Southwest Atlantic could be a very favorable place for a potential tropical disturbance over the coming week to 10 days. Now, if we do get any development of some kind, this is what the pattern would look like for steering. This is the GFS ensemble mean days 1 through 5, 500 millibar height and anomaly. You can see the depression in heights here, which would be our disturbance, whether it be a storm or just a wave, moving west-northwest towards the Caribbean islands during this time. Note that we have a trough to the north here, south of this blocking event, east of Hudson Bay, and a trough like this, because it's under a block, is not going to move off to the east very quickly, and it will actually sit here for several days, which means it will have lots of opportunities to influence the track of this system here. Now, if we actually had a developing tropical storm, it would have a chance to get pulled north by this trough, but it's pretty hard in the middle of the summer or by the end of the summer and early fall to recurve something out of the Caribbean all the way out to sea without touching North America. That's kind of hard to do. It has happened, but we would need this to develop very quickly and become a hurricane in short notice in order for it to completely phase with this trough. What's more likely is, since this trough is going to be weakening with time and very slowly merging back towards the northeast into the westerlies, the tendency for this trough to be moving out would likely allow this to continue moving northwest and eventually threaten land somewhere in this area if development occurred. This is the kind of pattern that could threaten land with this, and that's why it's worth just keeping a wary eye on. Right now there's really nothing here, but if development of some kind does occur east of the Caribbean, it would be moving northwest, and regardless of where exactly it goes into Central America up into the southeast US, this whole area is ripe with warm water, and the pattern would be favorable for both strengthening of a system, and the track would likely take it towards land areas west of the Caribbean islands, which will of course get the impacts first. So just something to keep an eye on for the next week to 10 days. Nothing imminent, no real threats. Development, if any, would be slow with a system like this. Monsoonal in nature always takes its sweet time getting its act together. Rain and weather coming for the islands, no doubt, but whether we get any true tropical development remains to be seen. There is some model support, and conditions right now are more favorable than they have been all season so far in the Atlantic. That's not saying too much. There's still some negative factors out there, but it is the best chance we've probably seen in a while for development east of the Caribbean and near the islands. So we shall see what happens, and we'll keep an eye on this. All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.